Sorry, guys. I was vacuuming, and oh my God. I need more time today. I need more time. Oh my God. But on the phone, sorry, I was on the damn phone. I went and, sorry, I can't talk. So I get a payment of almost up to $200 taken out on the 20th of every month, and it's for this goddamn bed that I bought, and I've been paying almost literally 200 bucks for 4 years now. I wish I had somebody to tell me, like, no, dumbass, do you realize what you're signing up for? But I needed a goddamn bed. I wasn't thinking. I don't know. I didn't have my mom to be like, no. So I'm still paying for that, and I apparently forgot. This is the first time ever forgot that they were going to take that money out on the 20th. So then what did I do? And YouTube pays on the 21st. So I was like, okay, hopefully that'll come through. Oh my God. So I'm sitting here waiting, 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 and thinking these guys are going to take the money out again, and I'm going to get another insufficient funds, which is $50. So I lost $50. So I took money out of my credit card because YouTube's pay didn't come in. So I'm like freaking out. And if you take money off your credit card to transfer to your debit card, you get like huge amounts of fines. And sure enough, at 12:01 midnight, that's when it was deposited. I was fucking pissed. So now I have all these fines. I'm in debt. Anyways, done my rant. I'm sorry you have a head pain, Dragon May Mama. Oh, Dragon! I gotta tell you this. So my son and I were also like, I've been all over the place today. I had like two people come here at two different times to get my bathroom tap fixed, my shower turning thing fixed, and my kitchen sink fixed. Like the taps, they're all fucked. So I had that guy in here doing that. I had another guy come in here for the rats. So he set traps everywhere. So I finally got those two things dealt with. And I don't know where the hell I was going with this. Oh yeah. So when we went for the walk, me and my son, because I had like a bunch of, it's spring, right? So I've been spring cleaning. I had like three big bags of donations. So him and I walked over to the donation bins, and then we went to the dollar store because I wanted to get fabric paint. Anyways, all the geese are coming back. All the geese are coming back. So you must be so excited there, Miss Dragon, because you hate the geese. Well, they're here. We've been watching them and the bees coming over. All right. Okay, so hi, Dragon May Mama. Hey, Deb. Hey, Teresa. Yo, yo, yo. Where? I know. I'm sorry. I've just brain farts all day. Hey, Cool Gamer. Hey, Luna. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hey, Kimmy. I know. I think what I pretty much like yeah, I got a job if I want one. It's bartending. And it's thing is though, it's like 2 miles away from me and I walk and I'm not dependable. I'm always sick. There's always something with me. Anyways, so I finally got this book. This is the Ellie Bly one, Nellie Bly one, not Ellie. And it's called 10 Days in a Madhouse. So we want to read this because of the letters that we were reading that were from the loony bin, right? Well, there's another book. It's coming tomorrow, and this one is letters from the loony bin in the attic in a suitcase. And all of it got great reviews. It was people were saying like it's really sad. Some of it's not good. um, but you get a first peek behind what is a loony bin. And I forgot a drink and I forgot a goddamn phone. I don't even know how to post my own PayPal. Usually Patty does, but Patty's been gone forever. Same with Great Dane Mom. I haven't seen them in a while. Okay, I'm gonna grab my phone real quick and grab screw it. I'm having a Diet Coke. Oh, come on. Seriously? I am not having a good day. What the hell? Steven, please do the dishes. I'm gonna pay you. I don't care. I'm gonna buy it. Sorry, I forgot to put you on on mute. So you probably heard me just a bitchin'. So I go to get my drink and it's in a box. I bought a 12 pack, right? Well, one of the pops apparently broke. So my whole fucking fridge is full of pop now. So I just went in there and I'm like, oh my God, Leland, can you please do the dishes? I'll pay you $100. Well, I can't, but it's like, please. Hey, Mama 3. Oh, thank you, Deb. I appreciate that very much. You haven't gotten your book? Actually, it's weird because I ordered today or I got something in today and it was cereal and Chips Ahoy snack packs for Leland's lunch. This book is pretty friggin' small, I'll tell you that. So I could probably read this, honestly, in one sitting. So we can probably get through it tonight. How many fucking pops do I have? Yeah, that's fun. I know when to share this too. Sorry, I'm so behind. I'm not ever like this. You can tell I'm just like, Oh, I finally seen Michelle's toe. Toe gate. That's some nasty crap. I'm buying her beer. No, I'm sorry. Just I'm laughing. I don't know what else to do. At least I'm not crying. I just took a clonazepam, half of one, because my anxiety is just why now my phone's not working. I can't get on channels. I can't do anything. Fuck off today. Just do it. Great off. It was right there. Okay. Oh, yeah. So with this Patreon, I wanna do something with it. I wanna change it. I wanna fix it. So what I wanna do, because apparently you can watch I think you can watch movies and stuff in there. So what I'm gonna do is continue with every Friday night. Like I wanted to on YouTube, but we can't. So what I was gonna do is have people join my, Patreon. I think it's like $3, and we can watch movies every Friday night. Like, that'd be fun. Okay, I think I'm good. Why did it I didn't send an email. Why does it sound like an email? I can't today. Alright, so it's book. There's Miss Ellie Bly, and it's called 10 Days in a Madhouse, and she wrote this because, well, I think it's $3 a month. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you can see this, but this is actually Blackwell's, island in New York. Alright, introduction, and apparently this is written by Nellie. Since my experiences in Blackwell's Island and State Asylum were published in The World, I have received hundreds of letters in regard to it. The edition containing my story long since ran out, and I have been prevailed upon to allow it to be published in book form to satisfy the hundreds who are yet asking for copies. I am happy to be able to state, as a result of my visit to the asylum and the exposures consequent thereon, that the city of New York has appropriated $1 million more per annum than ever before for the care of the insane. So I have at least the satisfaction of knowing that the poor unfortunates will be better cared for because of my work. Isn't that great? I love that. Because just like it's weird, Deb, because we really do like the same stuff. It's a good weird. It's awesome. Because I know you wanted to go do this. I thought, yeah. Can you do the dishes? Please, 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 please. Leland, really? You'll do it? Oh my God, you haven't. I've just been. What? I love you. You won't do the dishes for real? Wow, you take out the garbage once a month.
Hey, I'll take the garbage. That's one thing.
You lazy arse.
I don't really. I do. I will. I would do it.
I don't know why you can't. You're not doing anything anyways. All right, chapter one is called A Delicate Mission. On the 22nd of September, I was asked by the world. I don't know what the world is. I'm assuming, right? I would love to, Deb. That reminds me, now with this nicer weather and stuff, I'm gonna go in the graveyard and I'm gonna record it. He sounds like your voice. He doesn't do anything. I know. How about take all the boxes that are on the counter, take the bags out, and put them with the recycling, please, and thank you. Huh? Okay. I was asked by the world if I could have myself committed to one of the asylums for the insane in New York, with a view to writing a plain and unvarnished narrative of the treatment of the patients therein and the methods of management, etc. Can you imagine being asked to pretend you're crazy and insane to just to experience what it's like to be in a sane asylum? Wow. Are you in the cereal? Liar, I can hear it. I'm not lying. Did I think I had the courage to go through such an ordeal as the mission would demand? Could I assume the characteristics of insanity to such a degree that I could pass the doctors, live for a week among the insane, without the authorities there finding out that I was only Shil Amang and Shil Amang and taking notes? I don't know what that exactly means. I said I believed I could. I had some faith in my own ability as an actress and thought I could assume insanity long enough to accomplish any mission trusted to me. Could I pass a week in the insane ward at Blackwell's Island? I said I could, and I would, and I did. Now, I don't remember. Yeah, I think it's a newspaper too, newspaper magazine. Yeah. Um, in the movie, because that's how I found out about this. I watched the movie, and in the movie, she literally almost died at the end. They were trying to drown her, and her fiance or husband, whatever he was, had stopped it. So I don't know if that was just like Hollywood cinema or if it was actually true. Okay, I got that. My instructions were simply to go on with my work as soon as I felt that I was ready. I was to chronicle faithfully the experiences I underwent, and when once within the walls of the asylum, to find out and describe its inside workings, which are always so effectually hidden by white-capped nurses, as well as by bolts and bars from the knowledge of the public. We do not ask you to go there for the purpose of making sensational revelations. Write up things as you find them, good or bad. Give praise or blame as you think best, and the truth all the time. But I'm afraid of that chronic smile of yours, said the editor. I will smile no more, I said, and I went to execute my delicate and, as I find out, difficult mission. If I did get into the asylum, which I hardly hoped to, I had no idea that my experiences would contain aught else than a simple tale of life in the asylum. That such an institution could be mismanaged and that cruelties could exist near its roof. I did not deem possible. I always had desire to know asylum life more thoroughly, a desire to be convinced that the most helpless of God's creatures, the insane, were cared for kindly and properly. The many stories I had read of abuses in such institutions I had regarded as wildly exaggerated or else romances, yet there was a latent desire to know positively. This one I'm reading now? Yeah, dramatic. That's what I'm thinking. It would make sense because they wanted to quiet her. So they were doing the water treatment, the putting her it was like a vampire. It wasn't, but it was like a what you would do with a vampire. Basically, you put them in a coffin with that heavy rail, checkered rail on top so they couldn't get out. Yeah. And that's what they did to her, but they were dipping her into this coffin like thing with that rail thing on top so she couldn't get out. She could stick her fingers through, but she couldn't breathe. And they would dunk her in there. And that was a practice that they used. That is friggin' sick. So she almost died. Her husband came in, saved the day. So I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it. I shuddered to think how completely the insane were the power of their keepers, and how one would weep and plead for release. And all of no avail. If the keepers were so minded, eagerly I accepted the mission to learn the inside workings of the Blackwell Island Insane Asylum. How will you get me out? I asked my editor. After I once get in. I do not know, he replied. But we will get you out if we have to tell who you are. And for what purpose you feign insanity, only get in. I had little belief in my ability to deceive the insanity experts, and I think my editor had less. All the preliminary preparations for my deal were left to be planned by myself. Only one thing was decided upon, namely, that I should pass under the pseudonym of Nellie Brown, the initials of which would agree with my own name and my linen, so that there would be no difficulty in keeping track of my movements and assisting me out of any difficulties or dangers I might get into. They were ways of getting into the insane ward, but I did not know them. I might adopt one of the two courses. Either I could feign insanity at the house of friends and get myself committed on the decision of two competent physicians, or I could go to my goal by way of the police courts. Hey, KCG. KCG. Nellie practices insanity at home. That's funny. Do you think it's funny? I think it's funny because I want to know what she did. On reflection, I thought it wiser not to inflict myself upon my friends or to get any good-natured doctors to assist me in my purpose. Besides, to get to Blackwell's Island, my friends would have had to feign poverty. Really? And unfortunately for the end I had in view, my acquaintance with the struggling poor except my own self was only very superficial. So I determined upon the plan which led me to the successful accomplishment of my mission. I succeeded in getting um, committed to the insane ward at Blackwell's Island, where I spent 10 days and nights and had an experience which I shall never forget. I took upon myself to enact the part of a poor, unfortunate, crazy girl and felt it my duty not to shirk any of the disagreeable results that should follow. I became one of the city's insane wards for that length of time, experienced much, and saw and heard more of the treatment accorded to this helpless class of our population. And when I had seen and heard enough, my release was promptly secured. I left the insane ward with free breath of heaven, regret that I could not have brought it with me. Some of the unfortunate women who lived and suffered with me, and who, I am convinced, are just as sane as I was and am now myself. But here, let me say one thing. From the moment I entered the insane ward on the island, I made no attempt to keep up the assumed role of insanity. I talked and acted just as I do in ordinary life. Yet, strange to say, the more sanely I talked and acted, the crazier I was thought to be by all exceptions. One physician whose kindness and gentle ways I shall soon forget. Oh, yeah, that was in the movie as well. There was a doctor there who wanted her. He just fell for her, even though she was married and he was married. But return to my, sorry, chapter two, preparing for the ordeal. To return to my work and my mission, after receiving my instructions, I returned to my boarding house, and when evening came, I began to practice the role in which I was to make my debut on the morrow. What a difficult task, I thought, to appear before a crowd of people and convince them that I was insane. I had never been near insane persons before in my life and had not the faintest idea of what their actions were like. And then to be examined by a number of learned physicians who make insanity a specialty and who daily come in contact with insane people. How could I hope to pass these doctors and convince them that I was crazy? I feared that they could not be deceived. I began to think my task a hopeless one, but it had to be done. So I flew to the mirror and examined my face. I remembered all I had read of the doings of crazy people, how first all they have is staring eyes. And so I opened mine as wide as possible and stared unblinkingly at my own reflection. I assure you, the sight was not reassuring, even to myself, especially in the dead of night. I tried to turn the gas up higher in hopes that it would raise my courage. I succeeded only partially, but I consoled myself with the thought that in a few nights more I would not be there, but locked up in a cell with a lot of lunatics. Oh, you're so damn cute. Look at you. The weather was not cold, but nevertheless, when I thought of what was to come, wintry chills ran races up and down my back in a very mockery of perspiration, which was slowly but surely taking the curl out of my bangs. She's a writer, so she was like, she was writing for a magazine and or newspaper, and that was her mission, was to figure out what was going and write a book about it. That's why it's all worded just like this. Between times, practicing before the mirror and picturing my future as a lunatic, I read snatches of the improbable and impossible ghost stories. I want to read those ghost stories. So that when the dawn came to chase away the night, I felt that I was in a fit mood for my mission, yet hungry enough to feel keenly that I wanted my breakfast. Slowly and sadly, I took my morning bath and quietly bade farewell to a few of the most precious articles known to modern civilization. Tenderly, I put my toothbrush aside, and when taking a final rub of the soap, I murmured, "It may be for days, and it may be for longer." Then I donned the old clothing I had selected for the occasion. I was in the mood to look at everything through very serious glasses. It was just as well to take a last fond look, I mused, for who could tell but the people might turn away, sorry. For who could tell but that the strain of playing crazy and being shut up with a crowd of mad people might turn my own brain and I would never get back. But not once did I think of shirking my mission. Calmly, outwardly at least, I went out to my crazy business. I first thought it best to go to a boarding house, and after securing lodging, confidentially tell the landlady or lord, whichever it might chance to be, that I was seeking work, and in a few days after, apparently go insane. When I reconsidered the idea, I feared it would take too long to mature. Suddenly, I thought how much easier it would be to go to a boarding house for working women. I knew if once I made a houseful of women believe me crazy, that they would never rest until I was out of their reach and in secure quarters. From a directory, I selected the temporary home for females, number 84, Second Avenue. As I walked down the avenue, I determined that, once inside the home, I should do the best I could to get started on my journey to Blackwell's Island and the insane asylum. Hey, Rhodey. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to show both of us a little bit. Chapter 3, In the Temporary Home. I was left to begin my career as Nellie Brown, the insane girl. As I walked down the avenue, I tried to assume the look which maidens wear in pictures entitled Dreaming. Faraway expressions have a crazy air. I passed through the little paved yard to the entrance of the home. I pulled the bell, which sounded loud enough for a church chime, and nervously awaited the opening of the door to the home, which I intended should ere long cast me forth and out upon the charity of the police. The door was thrown back with a vengeance, and a short, yellow-haired girl of some 13 summers stood before me. 13 summers? That's a quite a like way to call someone 13 years old. Is the matron in? I asked faintly. Yeah, she's in. She's busy. Go to the back parlor, answered the girl in a loud voice, without one change in her particularly matured face. I followed these not overkind or polite instructions and found myself in a dark, uncomfortable black parlor. There I awaited the arrival of my hostess. I had been seated some 20 minutes at least, when a slender woman clad in plain dress and dark dress entered and, stopping before me, ejaculated inquiringly, well, yeah, ejaculating is completely different what she's saying from what I'm thinking. Are you the matron? I asked. No, she replied. The matron is sick. I am her assistant. What do you want? I want to stay here for a few days if you can accommodate me. Well, I have no single room, so we are so crowded, but if you will so occupy a room with another girl, I shall do that much for you. I shall be glad of that, I answered. How much do you charge? I had brought only about 70 cents along with me, knowing full well that the sooner my funds were exhausted, the sooner I should be put out, and to be put out was what I was working for. We charge 30 cents a night, was her reply to my question. And with that, I paid her for one night's lodging, and she left me on the plea of having something else to look after. Left to amuse myself at best I could, I took a survey of my surroundings. They were not cheerful, to say the least. A wardrobe, a desk, bookcase, organ, and several chairs completed the furnishment of the room into which the daylight barely came. By the time I had become familiar with my quarters, a bell, which rivaled the doorbell in its loudness, began clanging in the basement, and simultaneously women went trooping downstairs from all parts of the house. I imagined from the obvious signs that dinner was being served, but as no one had said anything to me, I made no effort to follow in the hungry train. Yet I did wish that someone would invite me down. It always produces such a lonely, homesick feeling to know others are eating and we haven't a chance, even if we are not hungry. I was glad when the assistant matron came up and asked me if I did not want something to eat. I replied that I did, and then I asked her what her name was. Mrs. Stannard, she said, and I immediately wrote it down in a notebook I had taken with me for the purpose of making memoranda and in which I had written several pages of utter nonsense for inquisitive scientists. Hey, Benita. Thus equipped, I awaited developments. But my But my dinner well, I followed Mrs. Standard down the uncarpeted stairs into the basement where a large number of women were eating. She found room for me at a table with three other women. The short-haired slavey, who had opened the door now, put in an appearance as a waiter, placing her arms akimbo and staring me out of countenance. She said, "Boiled mutton, boiled beef, beans, potatoes, coffee, or tea?" "Beef, potatoes, coffee, and bread," I responded. "Bread goes in," she explained as she made her way to the kitchen, which was in the rear. It was not very long before she returned with what I had ordered on a large, badly battered tray, which she banged down before me, and began my simple meal. It was not very enticing, so while making a feint of eating, I watched the others. I have often moralized on the repulsive form charity always assumes. Here was a home for deserving women, and yet what a mockery the name was. The floor was bare, and the little wood tables were sublimely ignorant of such modern beautifiers as varnish, polish, table colors. It is useless to talk about the cheapness of linen and its effect on civilization. Yet these honest workers, the most deserving of women, are asked to call this spot of bareness home. Hey, Great Dane. Oh, hey, Macy, or Macy. Hey, Mousy Files. There you are. I haven't seen you in forever, Great Dane. What year? What year? Yeah, what year was this? I think it's the 1800s. I'm pretty sure. No, it was actually. Oh wait, she died in 1922. So yeah, it would have been the 1800s. You didn't get a notification. Ah, I hate that. You moved. Furball. When the meal was finished, each woman went to the desk in the corner where Mrs. Stannard sat and paid her bill. I was given a much used and abused red check by the original piece of humanity in shape of my waitress. My bill was about 30 cents. After dinner, I went upstairs and resumed my former place in the back parlor. I was quite cold and uncomfortable, and had fully made up my mind that I could not endure that sort of business long. So the sooner I assumed my insane points, the sooner I would be released from enforced idleness. Ah, that was indeed the longest day I have ever lived. I listlessly watched the women in the front parlor where all sat except myself. Yeah, I missed you. Ugh. One did nothing but read and scratch her head, and occasionally call out mildly, "Georgie," without lifting her eyes from her book. Georgie was her over frisky boy. Well, that's why I shared on Twitter and Facebook, because I don't get a lot of people in here, and a lot of people will tell me, "Sorry, replay crew, we didn't get a notification." Like Felony Melanie, she never makes it on time because she doesn't get a notification ever. So Georgie was her over frisky boy who had more noise in him than any child I ever saw before. He did everything that was rude and unmannerly, I thought, and the mother never said a word unless she heard someone else yell at him. Another woman always kept going to sleep and waking herself up with her own snoring. I really felt wickedly thankful it was only herself she wakened. The majority of the women sat there doing nothing, but there was a few who made lace and knitted unceasingly. The enormous doorbell seemed to be going all the time, and so did the short-haired girl. The latter was, besides, one of those girls who sing all the time snatches of all the songs and hymns that have been composed for the last 50 years. There is such a thing as martyrdom in these days. The ringing of the bell brought more people who wanted shelter for the night, excepting one woman who was from the country on a day's shopping expedition. They were working women, some of them with children. As it drew toward evening, Miss Standard Stannard, came to me and said, "What is wrong with you? Have you some sorrow or trouble?" "No," I said, almost stunned at the suggestion. "Why?" It was in 1887? Okay, I just didn't know when. Yeah, it's okay though, Teresa. Oh, really? Great Dane? Wow. Well, because she said woman-like, I can see it in your face. It tells a story of great trouble. Yes, everything is so sad, I said, in a haphazard way, which I had intended to reflect my craziness. Can you imagine trying to be crazy? But you must not allow that to worry you. We all have our troubles, but we get over them in good time. What kind of work are you trying to get? I don't know. It's all so sad, I replied. Would you like to be a nurse for children and wear a nice white cap and apron? She asked. I put my handkerchief up to my face to hide a smile and replied in a muffled tone, I never worked. I don't know how. It came 30 minutes late. That's happened too. But you must learn, she urged. All these women here work. Do they? I said in a low, thrilling whisper. Why? They look horrible to me, just like crazy women. I'm so afraid of them. They don't look very nice, she answered dissentingly, but they are good, honest working women. We do not keep crazy people here. I again used my handkerchief to hide a smile. Just picture her going like this every single time she says it, and then she's like, I again used my handkerchief to hide a smile. As I thought that before morning, she would at least think she had one crazy person among her flock. They all look crazy, I asserted again. I am afraid of them. There are so many crazy people about, and one can never tell what they will do. Then there are so many murders committed, and the police never catch the murderers. And I finished with a sob that would have broken up an audience of blast critics. She gave a sudden and convulsive start, and I knew my first stroke had gone home. It was amusing to see what a remarkably short time it took her to get up from that chair and to whisper hurriedly, I'll come back to talk with you after a little while. Well, I knew she would not come back, and she didn't. Oh my God. When the the supper bell rang, I went along with the others to the basement and partook of the evening meal, which was similar to dinner, except that there was a smaller bill of fare and more people. The women who were employed outside during the day have returned after the evening meal. We all adjourned to the parlors, where all sat or stood, as there were not enough chairs to go around. It was a wretchedly lonely evening, and the light which fell from the solitary gas jet in the parlor and the oil lamp hall in the hall helped to envelope us in a dusky hue and dire spirits navy blue. I felt it would not require many inundations of this atmosphere to make me a fit subject for the place I was striving to reach. This apparently is Nellie's first meal at the home. You're the baby. I watched two women who seemed of all the crowd to be the most sociable, and I selected them as the ones to work out my salvation, or, more properly speaking, my condemnation and conviction. Excusing myself and saying that I felt lonely, I asked if I might join their company. They graciously consented, so with my hat and gloves on, which no one had asked me to lay aside, I sat down and listened to the rather wearisome conversation in which I took no part, merely keeping up my sad look, saying yes or no, or I can't stay, to their observations. Several times I told them I thought everybody in the house looked crazy, but they were slow to catch on to my very original remark. One said her name was Mrs. King, and that she was a Southern woman. Then she said that I had a Southern accent. She asked me bluntly if I did not really come from the South. I said yes. The other woman got to talking about the Boston boats and asked me if I knew at what time they left. For a moment, I forgot my role of assumed insanity and told her the correct hour of departure. She then asked me what work I was going to do or if I had ever done any. I replied that I thought it very sad that there were so many people working in the world. She said in reply that she had been unfortunate and had to come to New York, where she had worked at correcting proofs on a medical dictionary for some time, but that her health had given way under the task, and that she was now going to Boston again. When the maid came to tell us to go to bed, I remarked that I was afraid, and again ventured the assertion that all the women in the house seemed to be crazy. The nurse insisted on my going to bed. I asked if I could not sit on the stairs, but she said decisively, no, for everyone in the house would think you were crazy. Finally, I allowed them to take me to my room. 12 brothers and sisters. That's the way it was back then, though, eh? They had large families. Here I must introduce a new personage by name into my narrative. It is the woman who had been a proofreader and was about to return to Boston. She was Mrs. Kane, who was as courageous as she was good-hearted. She came into my room and sat and talked with me a long time, taking down my hair with gentle ways. She tried to persuade me to undress and go to bed, but I stubbornly refused to do so. During this time, a number of the inmates of the house had gathered round us. They expressed themselves in various ways. Poor Loon, they said. Why, she's crazy enough. I'm afraid to stay with such a crazy being in the house. She will murder us all before morning. One woman was for sending for a policeman to take me at once. They were all in a terrible and real state of fright. No one wanted to be responsible for me, and the woman who was to occupy the room with me declared that she would not stay with that crazy woman for all the money of the Vanderbilts. Yeah, Vanderbilts. It was then that Mrs. Kane said she would stay with me. I told her I would like to have her do so. So she was left with me. I didn't undress, but lay down on the bed, watching of my movements. She tried to induce me to lie down, but I was afraid to do this. I knew that if I once gave away, I should fall asleep and dream as pleasantly and peacefully as a child. I should use a slang expression to be liable to myself, dead anyway, or be liable to give myself dead away. So I insisted on sitting on the side of the bed and staring blankly at vacancy. My poor companion was put into a wretched state of unhappiness. My poor companion was put to, oh my God. Every few moments she would rise up and look at me. She told me that my eyes shone terribly brightly, and then began to question me, asking me where I lived, how long I had been in New York, what I had been doing, and many things besides. To all her questionings, I had but one response. I told her that I had forgotten everything, that ever since my headache had come on, I could not remember. Poor soul, how cruelly I tortured her, and what kind of heart she had, but how I tortured all of them. One of them dreamed of me as a nightmare. After I had been in the room or so, an hour or so, I was myself startled by hearing a woman screaming in the next room. I began to imagine that I was really in an insane asylum. Mrs. King woke up, looked around frightened, and listened. She then went out and into the next room, and I heard her asking another woman some questions. When she came back, she told me that the woman had a hideous nightmare. She had been dreaming of me. She had seen me, she said, rushing at her with a knife in my hand, with the intention of killing her. In trying to escape me, she had fortunately been able to scream and so to awaken herself and scare off the nightmare. Then Miss Kane got into bed again, considerably agitated but very sleepily. I was weary too, but I had braced myself up to the work and was determined to keep awake all night so as to carry on my work of impersonation to a successful end in the morning. I heard midnight. I had yet 6 hours to wait for daylight. The time passed with excruciating slowness. Minutes appeared hours, the noises in the house and on the avenue ceased. Fearing that sleep would coax me into its grasp, I commenced to review my life. How strange it all seems. One incident, if never so trifling, is but a link more to a chain us to our unchangeable fate. I began at the beginning and lived again the story of my life. Old friends were recalled with a pleasurable thrill. Old enemies, old heartaches, old joys were once again present. The turned down pages of my life were turned up, and the past was present. When I was completed, I turned my thoughts bravely to the future, wondering, first, what the next day would bring forth, then making plans for carrying out my project. I wondered if I should be able to pass over the river to the goal of my strange ambition, to become eventually an inmate of the halls inhabited by my mentally wrecked sisters, and then once in, what would be my experience? And after, how do I get out? Bah, I said, they will get me out. That was the greatest night of my existence. For a few hours, I stood face to face with self. I looked out toward the window and hailed with joy the light summer of dawn. The light grew strong gray, but the silence was strikingly still. My companion slept. I had still an hour or two to pass over. Fortunately, I found some employment for my mental activity. Robert Bruce, in his captivity, had won confidence in the future and passed his time as pleasantly as possible under the circumstances by watching the celebrated spider building his web. I had last noble vermin to interest me, yet I believe I made some valuable discoveries in natural history. I was about to drop off to sleep in spite of myself when I was suddenly startled to wakefulness. I thought I heard something crawl and fall down upon the counterpane with an almost inaudible thud. I had the opportunity of studying these interesting animals very thoroughly. They had evidently come for breakfast and were not a little disappointed to find that their principal plat was not there. They scampered up, down the pillow, came together, seemed to hold interesting converse, and acted in every way as if they were puzzled by the absence of an appetizing breakfast. After one consultation of some length, they finally disappeared, seeking victims elsewhere, and leaving me to pass the long minutes by giving my attention to cockroaches, whose size and agility were something of a surprise to me. My room companion had been sound asleep for a long time, but she now woke up and expressed surprise at seeing me still awake and apparently as lively as a cricket. She was as sympathetic as ever. She came to me and took my hand and tried her best to console me and asked me if I did not want to go home. She kept me upstairs until nearly everybody was out of the house and then took me down to the basement for coffee and a bun. After that, partaken in silence, I went back to my room where I sat moping. Mrs. Keene grew more and more anxious. What is to be done? She kept exclaiming. Where are your friends? No, I answered. I have no friends, but I have some trunks. Where are they? I want them. The good woman tried to pacify me, saying they would be found in good time. She believed that I was insane. Yet I forgive her. It is only after one is in trouble that one realizes how little sympathy and kindness there are in the world. The women in the home, who were not afraid of me, had wanted to have some amusement at my expense, and so they had bothered me with questions and remarks that had been insane, would have been cruel and inhumane. Only this one woman along among the crowd, pretty and delicate Mrs. Kane, displayed true womanly feeling. She compelled the others to cease teasing me and took the bed of the woman who refused to sleep near me. She protested against the suggestion to leave me alone and to have me locked up for the night so that I could harm no one. She insisted on remaining with me in order to administer aid should I need it. She soothed my hair and bathed my brow, and talked as soothingly to me as a mother would do to an ailing child. By every means she tried to have me go to bed and rest, and when it drew toward morning, she got up and wrapped up a blanket around me for fear I might get cold. Then she kissed me on the brow and whispered compassionately, Poor child, poor child. How much I admired that little woman's courage and kindness, how I longed to reassure her and whisper that I was not insane, and how I hoped that if any poor girl should ever be so fortunate as to be what I was pretending to be, she might meet one with one who possessed the same spirit of human kindness possessed by Mrs. Ruth Kane. Started chilly. The frig? My glasses are scuffed up somehow. Shit. Chapter 5 Judge Duffy and the Police. But to return to my story, I kept up my role until the assistant matron, Mrs. Stannard, came in. She tried to persuade me to be calm. I began to see clearly what she wanted to get me out of the house at all hazards quietly if possible. This I did not want. I refused to move, but kept up ever the refrain of my lost trunks. Finally, someone suggested that an officer be sent for. After a while, Mrs. Stannard put on her bonnet and went out. Then I knew that I was making an advance toward the home of the insane. Soon she returned, bringing with her two policemen, big, strong men who entered the room rather unceremoniously, evidently expecting to meet with a person violently crazy. The name of one of them was Tom Bucker. Oh, Deb. When they entered, I pretended not to see them. "I want you to take her quietly," said Mrs. Stannard. "If she won't come along quietly," responded one of them, "I will drag her through the streets." I still took no notice of them, but certainly wished to avoid raising a scandal outside. Fortunately, Mrs. Keene came to my rescue. She told the officers about my outcries for my lost trunks, and together they made up a plan to get me to go along with them quietly by telling me they would go with me to look for my lost effects. They asked me if I would go. I said I was afraid to go alone. Mrs. Standard then said she would accompany me, and she arranged that the two policemen should follow us at a respectful distance. She tied on my veil for me, and we left the veil for me, and we left the house by the basement and started across town. The two officers following at some distance behind. We walked along very quietly and finally came to the station house, which the good woman assured me was the express office, and that there we should certainly find my missing effects. I went inside with fear and trembling for good reason. As few days previous to this, I had met Captain McCullough at a meeting held in Cooper Union. At that time, I had asked him for some information which he had given me. If he were in, would he not recognize me? And then all would be lost so as far as getting to the island was concerned. I pulled my sailor hat as low down over my face as I possibly could and prepared for the ordeal. Sure enough, there was sturdy Captain McCullough standing near the desk. He watched me closely as the officer at the desk conversed in a low tone with Mrs. Stannard and the policeman who brought me in. "Are you Nellie Brown?" asked the officer. I said I supposed I was. "Where do you come from?" he asked. I told him I don't know. And then Mrs. Stannard gave him a lot of information about me, told him how strangely I had acted at her home, how I had not slept a wink all night, and that, in her opinion, I was poor, unfortunate, who had been driven crazy by inhumane treatment. There was some discussion between Mrs. Stannard and the two officers, and Tom Bockert was told to take us down to the court in a car. Who's farting? I kind of missed most of this was farting. For what is faffing? Zuna, what the hell are you trying to say? So now she's in the hands of the police. "Come along," Brockett said. "I will find your trunk for you." We all went together, Mrs. Stannard, Tom Brockett, and myself. I said it was very kind of them to go with me, and I should not soon forget them. As we walked along, I kept up my refrain about my trunks injecting occasionally some remark about the dirty condition of the streets and the curious character of the people we met on the way. "I don't think I have ever seen such people before," I said. "Who are they?" I asked, and my companions looked upon me with expressions of pity, evidently believing I was a foreigner, an immigrant, or something of the sort. They told me that the people around me were working people. I remarked once more that I thought there were too many working people in the world for the amount of work to be done, at which remark policeman P.T. Bockert eyed me closely, evidently thinking that my mind was gone for good. We passed several other policemen who would generally ask my sturdy guardians what was the matter with me. By this time, quite a number of ragged children were following us too, and they passed remarks about me that were to me original as well as amusing. "What's she up for?" says cop. "What'd ye Where did you get her? Where did you pull her? She's a daisy." I have no idea what that word means. Okay, so it means missing. I have, Mousy. If you're willing to try it, I need your information. I'm gonna send you it so I can get a free gift. Well, yeah, they have tomatoes a fruit. They got seeds, so I don't know why they allow the cucumber to become a vegetable. That doesn't even make sense. I'm sorry, Great Dane. Sepsis. Oh my God. It's like Wish or Home, but for Canadians. It's all free shipping, everything. No, I don't even know what that word was. I'm trying to think how I can send it to you. Do you have Facebook? It is there too? I always thought it was just Canadian for some reason. Here's my Facebook, I think. Yeah. If you go stupid, I didn't even put it in there. What I'll do is I'll put my Facebook on here and then we can all send each other things and we'll all get oh, it's way better than Wish. I got a lot of great things off there. I just haven't received it yet. Yeah. And they have crystals that are cheap. Okay, I'll put my name in here. Any of you guys can add me. Absolutely fine. Even if you don't have Timo. There you go. It is what it is, right? Like I love it. I really do. And it's cheap as hell. I want to look on there for that black ring I was talking about yesterday. You're waiting for your first order? Let me know when you get it. Mine's already shipped. I think actually I think I get mine. Hold on. You. What about me? I got messages. Yeah, it's like win your 3 freebies now. Oh wow, Great Dane Mom. Slang means doing things in a disorganized way and not achieving very much. P.S. Check your PayPal. Oh, thank you, Zuna. Faff is that faffing? I love the way you guys talk. I have credit. Oh, I got 3 cents. Orders and shipping. When the hell? All right. March 20th to March 24th. This one's coming in. Well, it's already, what is today, the 22nd? Yeah. 2 more days. What about this one? Tomorrow. So I get one tomorrow and, oh, no worries, Benita. So I got skin cream. So I'm gonna try it and let you guys know about if it's any good or not. Usually, um, they pretty much are pretty good. A lot of them are eye creams, face creams. Like I got this pomegranate one. Oh, you did? Okay. Never shows up, but I'm gonna go check anyways. So I get an order tomorrow and the next day as well. I ordered I have 2 orders of 7 things because you have to have at least $20. So I spent $40 and got 14 things. You've been looking at Temu? I like it. And everything's 90% off right now. Where the hell is my Facebook? Do I even have it on my phone? Yeah, I do. You mentioned me in a review? Okay. I don't know what that meant. Oh, mama of 3. Sorry, I don't check it much. I think you'll be happy with your purchase. Sorry, I'm trying to find my that's not. Why am I on a dating app? Mm. Oh my god, I'm still on this dating app? Okay, I think this is you, so I'm gonna say okay. Let me know if this is it. The fudge. Oh, now it pops up. I hope I said oh, fuck. Alright. And then Great Dane Mama. I think that was you? Yes, actually, quite a few of them have. I just looked through 3 of them. Well, then there was a couple that weren't, so you probably saw my face going Poor Mrs. Stannard was more frightened than I was. The whole situation grew interesting. I kind of feel like just looking at Timu now, but I won't. I'll finish. The whole situation grew interesting, but I still had fears for my fate before the judge. At last, we came to a low building, and Tom Brockett kindly volunteered the information. Here's the express office. We shall soon find those trunks of yours. The entrance to the building was surrounded by a curious crowd, and I did not think my case was bad enough to permit me passing them without some remark, so I asked if all those people had lost their trunks. Yes, he said, nearly all these people are looking for trunks. I said, they all seem to be foreigners, too. Yes, said Tom, they are all foreigners. Just landed. They have all lost their trunks, and it takes most of our time to help find them for them. We entered the courtroom. It was the Essex Market Police courtroom. At last, question of my sanity or insanity was to be decided. Judge Duffy sat behind the high desk, wearing a look which seemed to indicate that he was dealing out the milk of a human. He was dealing out the milk of a human kindness by wholesale. I rather feared I would not get the fate I sought because of the kindness I saw on every line of his face, and it was with rather a sinking heart that I followed Mrs. Stannard as she answered the summons to go up to the desk where Tom Brockett had just given an account of the affair. Come here, said an officer. What's your name? Nellie Brown, I replied with a little accent. I have lost my trunks and would like it if you could find them. When did you come to New York? He asked. I did not come to New York, I replied. Well, I added mentally, because I have been here for some time. But you are in New York now, said the man. No, I said, looking as incredulous as I thought a crazy person would. I did not come to New York. That girl is from the West, he said, in a tone that made me tremble. She has a Western accent. Someone else who had been listening to their brief dialogue here asserted that he had lived South and that my accent was Southern, while another officer was positive it was Eastern. I felt much relieved when the first spokesman turned to the judge and said, Judge, here's a particular case of a young woman who doesn't know who she is or where she came from. You had better attend to it now. I commenced to shake with more than the cold, and I looked around at the strange crowd about me, composed of poorly dressed men and women and stories printed on their faces of hard lives, abuse, and poverty. Some were consulting eagerly with friends, while others sat still with a look of utter hopelessness. Everywhere was a sprinkling of well dressed, well fed officers, watching the scene passively and almost indifferently. It was only an old story with them. One more unfortunate added to a long list which has long since ceased to be of any interest to or concern to them. I had to do my dishes too, but I'm gonna ignore them. I'm getting busy. Come here, girl, and lift your veil, called Judge Duffy, in tones which surprised me by a harshness which I did not think from the kindly face he possessed. Who are you speaking to? I inquired, in my stateliest manner. Come here, my dear, and lift your veil. You know the Queen of England, and if she were here, would you have lift your veil? He said, very kindly. That is much better, I replied. I am not the Queen of England, but I lift my veil. As I did so, the judge looked at me, and then in a very kind and gentle tone, he said, my dear child, what is wrong? Nothing's wrong, except I have lost my trunks, and this man, indicating policeman Bockert, promised to bring me where they could be found. What do you know about this child? Asked the judge sternly of Mrs. Stannard, who stood pale and trembling by my side. I know nothing of her except that she came to my home yesterday and asked to remain overnight. The home? What do you mean by the home? Asked Judge Duffy quickly. It is a temporary home kept for working women at number 84 Second Avenue. What is your position there? I'm assistant matron. Well, tell us all you know of the case. When I was going into the home yesterday, I noticed her coming down the avenue. She was all alone, and I just got into the house when the bell rang and she came in. When I talked with her, she wanted to know if she could stay all night, and I said she could. After a while, she said all the people in the house looked crazy, and she was afraid of them. Then she would not go to bed, but sat up all night. Had she any money? Yeah. Yes, I replied, answering for her. I paid her for everything, and the eating was the worst I ever tried. There was a general smile at this, and some murmurs of, she's not so crazy on the food question. Poor child, said Judge Duffy. She's well dressed and a lady. Her English is perfect, and I would stake everything on her being a good girl. I am positive she's somebody's darling. At this announcement, everybody laughed, and I put my handkerchief over my face and endeavored to choke the laughter that threatened to spoil my plans in despite of my resolutions. But could I? I mean, she is some woman's darling, amended the judge. I am sure someone is searching for her. Poor girl, I will be good to her, for she looks like my sister who is dead. There was a hush for a moment after the announcement, and the officers glanced at me more kindly, while I silently blessed the kind-hearted judge, and hoped that any poor creatures who might be afflicted as I pretend to be I pretended to be should have as kindly a man to deal with as Judge Duffy. I wish the reporters were here, he last said. They would be able to find out something about her. I got very much frightened at this, for if there is anyone who can ferret out a mystery is a reporter. I felt that I would rather face a mass of expert doctors, policemen, and detectives than two bright specimens of my craft, so I said, I don't see why all this is needed to help me find my trunks. These men are imprudent, and I do not want to be stared at. I will go away. I don't want to stay here. So saying, I pulled down my veil and secretly hoped the reporters would be detained elsewhere until I was sent to the asylum. I don't know what to do with the poor child, said the worried judge. She must be taken care of. Send her to the island, suggested one of the officers. Oh, don't, said Mrs. Stannard in evident alarm. Don't. She's a lady and it would kill her to be put on the island. For once, I felt like shaking the good woman to think the island was just the place I wanted to reach, and here she was trying to keep me from it, going there. It was very kind of her, but rather provoking under the circumstances. There's been some foul work here, said the judge. I believe this child has been drugged and brought into the city. Make out the papers, and we will send her to Bellevue for examination. Probably in a few days, the effect of the drug will pass off, and she'll be able to tell us a story that will be startling, if the reporters would only come. I dreaded them, so I said something about not wishing to stay there any longer, to be gazed at Judge Duffy, then told the policeman, Bockert, to take me to the back office. As we were seated, the Judge Duffy came in and asked me if my home was in Cuba. Yes, I replied with a smile. How'd you know? Oh, I knew it, my dear. Now, tell me where was it? In what part of Cuba? On the Hacienda, I replied. Oh, said Judge. On a farm. Do you remember Havana? Si, senor, I answered. It's near home. How did you know? Oh, I knew all about it. Now won't you tell me the name of your home? He asked persuasively. That's what I forget, I answered sadly. I have a headache all the time and it makes me forget things. I don't want them to trouble me. Everyone, everybody's asking me questions and it makes my head worse. And in truth, it did. Well, no one shall trouble you anymore. Sit down here and rest a while. And the genial judge left me alone with Mrs. Stannard. Just then an officer came in with a reporter. I was so frightened and thought I would be recognized as a journalist, so I turned my head away and said, I don't want to see any reporters. I will not see any. The judge said I was not to be troubled. Well, there's no insanity in that, said the man who had brought the reporter, and together they left the room. Once again, I had a fit of fear. Had I gone too far in not wanting to see a reporter? And was my sanity detected? If I had given the impression that I was sane, I was determined to undo it. So I jumped up and ran back and forward through the office, Miss Stannard clinging terrified to my arm. I won't stay here. I want my trunks. Why do they bother me with so many people? And thus I kept on until the ambulance surgeon came in, accompanied by the judge. Ch What am I on? Chapter 6. Pronounced insane. Here is a poor girl who has been drugged, explained the judge. She looks like my sister, and anyone can see she is a good girl. I'm interested in the child, and I would do as much for her as if she were my own. I want you to be kind to her, he said to the ambulance surgeon. Then, turning to Miss Stannard, he asked her if she could not keep me for a few days until my case was inquired into. Fortunately, she said she could not, because all the women at the house were afraid of me and would leave if I kept there. I was very much afraid she would keep me if the pay was assured her, and so I said something about the bad cooking and that I did not intend to go back to that home. Then came the examination. The doctor looked clever, and I had not one hope of deceiving him, but I determined to keep up the farce. "Put your tongue out. Put out your tongue," he ordered briskly. I gave an inward chuckle at the thought. "Put out your tongue when I tell you." "I don't want to," I answered truthfully enough. "You must. You're sick. I am a doctor." "I'm not sick and never was. I only want my trunks." Yes, Teresa. Yeah. That's why I'm laughing. Okay, Zuna, thank you. So she's definitely um pretending that she's insane because she wants to get into the same asylum. That way she can, because she's a reporter, that way she can like write a book or report in a newspaper or whatever about all the atrocities committed at this insane asylum. That's why she's doing it. And she did. She helped. She actually did. They ended up putting $1 million into that insane asylum and helped things greatly. An insanity expert at work. But I put out my tongue when he looked at in a sagacious manner. Then he felt my pulse and listened to the beating of my heart. I had not the least idea how the heart of an insane person beat, so I held my breath all the while he listened, until, when he quit, I had to give a gasp to regain it. Then he tried the effect of the light on the pupils of my eyes. Holding his hand within a half inch of my face, he told me to look at it. Then, jerking it hastily away, he would examine my eyes. I was puzzled to know what insanity was like in the eye, so I thought the best thing under circumstances was to stare. This I did. I held my eyes riveted, unblinking, upon his hand, and when he removed it, I exerted all my strength to keep my eyes from blinking. "What drugs have you been taking?" he then asked me. "Drugs?" I repeated wonderingly. "I don't know what drugs are." The pupils of her eyes have been enlarged ever since she came to the home. They have not changed once, explained Mrs. Stannard. I wondered how she knew whether they had or not, but I kept quiet. "I believe she has been using belladonna," said the doctor, and for the first time I was thankful that I was a little nearsighted, which, of course, answers for the enlargement of the pupils. I thought I might as well be truthful when I could without injuring my eye, so I told him I was nearsighted, that I was not in the least ill, had never been sick, and that no one had a right to detain me when I wanted to find my trunks. I wanted to go home. He wrote a lot of things in a long, slender book and then said he was going to take me home. The judge told him to take me and to be kind to me and to tell the people at the hospital to be kind to me and to do all they could for me. If we only had more such men as Judge Duffy, the poor unfortunates would not find life all darkness. I began to have more confidence in my own ability now. Since one judge, one doctor, and a mass of people had pronounced me insane, and I put on my veil quite gladly when I was told that I was to be taken in a carriage and that afterward I would go home. I am so glad to go with you, I said, and I meant it. It was very glad indeed. Once more, guarded by policeman Brockert, I walked through the little crowded courtroom. I felt quite proud of myself as I went out a side door into an alleyway where the ambulance was waiting. Near the closed and barred gates was a small office accompanied by several men and large books. We all went in there, and when they began to ask me questions, the doctor interposed and said he had all the papers and that it was useless to ask me anything further because I was unable to answer questions. That was great relief to me, for my nerves were already feeling the strain. A rough-looking man wanted to put me into an ambulance, but I refused his aid so decidedly that doctor and policeman told him to desist, and they performed that gallant office themselves. I did not enter the ambulance without protest. I made the remark that I had never seen a carriage of that make before, and that I did not want to ride in it. But after a while, I let them persuade me, as I had right along intended to. I shall never forget that ride. After I was put in the flat on the yellow blanket, the doctor got in and sat near the door. The large gates were swung open, and the curious crowd which had collected swayed back to make way for the ambulances as backed out. How they tried to get a glimpse of the supposed crazy girl. The doctor saw that I did not like the people gazing at me, and considerately put down the curtains after asking my wishes in regard to it. Still, that did not keep the people away. The children raced after us, yelling all sorts of slang expressions and trying to get a peep under the curtains. I was quite an interesting day, but I must say that it was excruciatingly a rough one. I held on, only there was not much to hold on to, and the driver drove as he feared someone would catch up with us. Right, chapter 8. In Bellevue Hospital. At last, Bellevue was reached. So now she's finally in the sane asylum. Hey, Heavenly Cow. The third station on my way to the island. I had passed through successfully the ordeals at the time and at Essex Market Police Court, and now felt confident that I should not fail. The ambulance stopped with a sudden jerk, and the doctor jumped out. How many have you? I heard someone inquire. Only one, for the pavilion, was the reply. A rough-looking man came forward and, catching hold of me, attempted to drag me out as if I had the strength of an elephant and would resist. The doctor, seeing my look of disgust, ordered him to leave me alone, saying that he would take charge of me himself. He then lifted me carefully out, and I walked with the grace of the queen past the crowd that had gathered curious to see the new unfortunate. Together with the doctor, I earned a small dark office where there were several men. The one behind the desk opened a book and began on the long string of questions which had been asked me so often. I refused to answer, and the doctor told him it was not necessary to trouble me further, as had all the papers made out, and I was too insane to be able to tell anything that would be of consequence. I felt relieved that it was so easy here. As though still undaunted, I had begun to feel faint for want of food. The order was then given to take me to the insane pavilion, and a muscular man came forward and caught me so tightly by the arm that a pain ran clear through me. It made me angry, and for a moment I forgot my role as I turned to him and said, "How dare you touch me?" At this, he loosened his hold somewhat, and I shook him off with more strength than I thought I possessed. "I will go with no one but this man," I said, pointing to the ambulance surgeon. "The judge said that he was to take care of me, and I will go with no one else." At this, the surgeon said that he would take me, and so we went arm in arm, following the man who had first been so rough with me. We passed through a well cared for grounds and finally reached the insane ward. A white capped nurse was there to receive me. "This young girl is to wait here for the boat," said the surgeon, and then he started to leave me. I begged him not to go or to take me with him, but he said he wanted to get his dinner first, and that I should wait there for him. When I insisted on accompanying him, he claimed that he had to assist in an amputation and that it would not look well for me to be present. It was evident that he believed he was dealing with an insane person. Just then, the most horrible insane cries came from the yard in the rear. With all my bravery, I felt a chill at the prospect of being shut up with a fellow creature who was really insane. The doctor evidently noticed my nervousness, for he said to the attendant, "What a noise the carpenters make." Turning to me, he offered me explanation to offer the effect that new buildings were being erected and that the noise came from some of the workmen engaged upon it. I told him I did not want to stay there without him, and to pacify me, he promised soon to return. He left me, and I found myself at last an occupant of the insane asylum. Hey, Jen. I stood at the door and contemplated the scene before me. The long, uncarpeted hall was scrubbed to the particular whiteness seen only in public institutions. In the rear of the hall were large iron doors fastened by padlock. Several still-looking benches and a number of willow chairs were the only articles of furniture. On either side of the hall were doors leading into what I supposed and what proved to be bedrooms. Near the entrance door, on the right-hand side, was a small setting room for the nurses, and opposite it was a room where dinner was dished out. A nurse in a black dress, white cap, and apron, and armed with a bunch of keys, had charge of the hall. I soon learned her name, Miss Ball. An old Irish woman, was maid of all work. I called her Mary, and I'm glad to know that there is such a good-hearted woman in that place. I experienced only kindness and the utmost consideration from her. There were only 3 patients, as they are called. I made the fourth. I thought I might as well begin to work at once, for I still expected that the very first doctor might declare me sane and send me out again into the wide, wide world. So I went down to the rear of the room and introduced myself to one of the women, and she asked her all about herself. Her name, she said, was Miss Ann Neville, and she had been sick from overwork. She'd been working as a chambermaid, and when her health gave way, she was sent to some sister's home to be treated. Her nephew, who was a waiter, was out of work, and being unable to pay her expenses at the home, had had her transferred to Bellevue. Is there anything wrong with you mentally as well? I asked her. No, she said, the doctors have been asking me many curious questions and confusing me as much as possible, but I have nothing wrong with my brain. Do you know that only insane people are sent to this pavilion? I asked. Yes, I know, but I'm unwilling to do anything. The doctors refuse to listen to me, and it's useless to say anything to the nurses. Satisfied from various reasons that Miss Nelville was as sane as I was myself, I transferred my intentions to one of the other patients. I found her in need of medical aid and quite silly mentally, although I have seen many women in the lower walks of life whose sanity was never questioned, who were not any brighter. The third patient, Mrs. Fox, would not say much. She was very quiet, and after telling me that her case was hopeless, refused to talk. I began now to feel sure of my position, and I determined that no doctor should convince me that I was sane so long as I had the hope of accomplishing my mission. A small, fair complexion nurse arrived, and after putting on her cap, told Miss Ball to go to dinner. The new nurse, Miss Scott by name, came to me and said rudely, "Take off your hat." "I shall not take off my hat," I answered. "I am waiting for the boat, and I shall not remove it." "Well, you're not going on any boat. You might as well know it now, as later you're in the asylum for the insane." Oh, I think this is that bitch nurse, that really evil one. Although fully aware of that fact, her unvarnished words gave me a shock. "I did not want to come here. I am not sick or insane, and I will not stay," I said. "It will be a long time before you get out, if you don't do as you were told," answered Miss Scott. "You might as well take off your hat, or I shall use force, and if I'm not able to do it, I have but to touch a bell, and I shall get assistance. Will you take it off?" "No, I will not. I am cold, and I want my hat on, and you can't make me take it off." "I shall give you a few more minutes, and if you don't take it off then, I shall use force, and I warn you, it will not be very gentle." "If you take my hat off, shall I take your cap off? So now?" Miss Scott was called to the door then, and as I feared that an exhibition of temper might show too much sanity, I took off my hat and gloves and was sitting quietly looking into space when she returned. I was hungry and quite pleased to see Mary make preparations for dinner. The preparations were simple. She merely pulled a straight bench up alongside of a bare table and ordered her patients to gather around the feast. Then she brought out a small tin plate on which was a piece of boiled meat and a potato. I could not have been colder had it been cooked the week before. Ooh, and it had no chance to make acquaintance with salt and pepper. I would not go up to the table, so Mary came to where I sat in a corner, and while handing out the tin plate, asked, "Have ye any pennies about ye, dearie?" "What?" I said in my surprise. "Have ye any pennies, dearie, that ye could give me? They'll take them all from ye anyway, dearie, so I might as well have 'em." I understood it fully now, but I had no intention of feeing Mary so early in the game, fearing it would have an influence on her treatment of me. So I said I had lost my purse, and which was true, but though I did not give Mary any money, she was none the less kind to me. When I objected to the tin plate in which she had brought my food, she fetched a china one for me, and when I found it impossible to eat the food she presented, she gave me a glass of milk and a soda cracker. All the windows in the hall were open, and the cold air began to tell on my southern blood. I grew so cold, it grew so cold indeed, as to be almost unbearable. And I complained of it to Miss Scott and Miss Ball, but they answered curtly that, as I was in a charity place, I could not expect much else. All the other women were suffering from the cold, and the nurses themselves had to wear heavy garments to keep themselves warm. I asked if I could go to bed. They said no. At last, Miss Scott got an old gray shawl, not gravy, and shaking some of those moss out of it, told me to put it on. It's rather a bad-looking shawl, I said. Well, some people would get along better if they were not so proud, said Miss Scott. People on charity should not expect anything and should not complain. I put the moth-eaten shawl with all its musty smell around me and sat down at a wicker chair, wondering what would come next, whether I should freeze to death or survive. My nose was very cold, so I covered up my head and was in a half doze when the shawl was suddenly jerked from my face and a strange man and Miss Scott stood before me. The man proved to be a doctor, and his first greetings were, "I've seen that face before." "Then you know me?" I asked, with a great show of eagerness that I did not feel. "I think I do. Where'd you come from?" "From home." "Where's home?" "Don't you know?" "Cuba." Hey, Sops. Positively demented. He then sat down beside me, felt my pulse, and examined my tongue, and at last said, "Tell Miss Scott all about yourself." "No, I will not. I will not talk with women." "What do you do in New York?" "Nothing." "Can you work?" "No." "No, senor." "Tell me, are you a woman of the town?" "I do not understand you," I replied, heartily disgusted with him. "I mean, have you allowed the men to provide for you and keep you?" I felt like slapping him in the face, but I had to maintain my composure, so I simply said, "I do not know what you're talking about. I always lived at home." After many more questions, fully as useless and senseless, he left me and began to talk with the nurse. "Positively demented," he said. "I consider it a hopeless case. She needs to be put where someone will take care of her." And so I passed my second medical expert. After this, I began to have a smaller regard for the ability of doctors than I ever had before, and a greater one for myself. I felt sure now that no doctor could tell whether people were insane or not, so long as the case was not violent. Later in the afternoon, a boy and a woman came. The woman sat down on a bench while the boy went in and talked with Miss Scott. In a short time, he came out and just nodding goodbye to the woman, who was his mother, went away. She did not look insane, but as she was German, I could not learn her story. Her name, however, was Miss Louise Shands. She seemed quite lost, but when the nurses put her at some sewing, she did her work well and quickly. At 3 in the afternoon, all the patients were given a gruel broth, and at 5, a cup of tea and a piece of bread. I was favored, for when they saw that it was impossible for me to eat the bread or drink the stuff honored by the name of tea, they gave me a cup of milk and a cracker, the same as I had at noon. Just as the gas was being can you imagine? All these people must have, lost so much weight if at dinner you're eating a glass of milk and a soda cracker, and at lunch you're having chicken broth. Just as the gas was being lighted, another patient was added. She was a young girl, 25 years old. She told me that she had just gotten up from a sick bed. Her appearance confirmed her story. She looked like one who had a severe attack of fever. "I am now suffering from nervous debility," she said, "and my friends have sent me here to be treated for it." I did not tell her where she was, and she seemed quite satisfied. At 6:15, Miss Ball said that she wanted to go away, and so we would all have to go to bed. Then each of us, we now numbered 6, were assigned a room and told to undress. I did so, and was given a short cotton flannel gown to wear during the night. Then she then she took every particle of the clothing I had worn during the day, and, making it up in a bundle, labeled it brown, and took it away. The iron-barred window was locked, and Miss Ball, after giving me an extra blanket, which, she said, was a favor rarely granted, went out and left me alone. It was at 7, yeah, that's crazy. The bed was not a comfortable one. It was so hard indeed that I could not make a dent in it, and the pillow was stuffed with straw. Under the sheet was an oilcloth spread. As the night grew cold, I tried to warm the oilcloth. I kept on trying, but when morning dawned, and it was still as cold as when I went to bed, and had reduced me to the temperature of an iceberg, I gave it up as an impossible task. I had hoped to get some rest on my first night in the insane asylum, but I was doomed to a disappointment. When the night nurses came in, they were curious to see me and find out what I was like. No sooner had they left than I heard some went at my door inquiring for Nellie Brown, and I began to tremble, fearing always that my sanity would be discovered. By listening to the conversation, I found it was a reporter in search of me, and I heard him ask for my clothing so that he might examine it. I listened quite anxiously to the talk about me and was relieved to learn that I was considered hopelessly insane. That was encouraging. After the reporter left, I heard new arrivals, and I learned that a doctor was there and intended to see me. For what purpose, I knew not, and I imagined all sorts of horrible things, such as examinations and the rest of it. And when they got to my room, I was shaking with more than fear. Nellie Brown, here's the doctor. He wishes to speak with you, said the nurse. If that's all he wanted, I thought I could endure it. I removed the blanket which I had put over my head in sudden fright and looked up. The sight was reassuring. He was a handsome young man. He had the air and address of a gentleman. Some people have since censored this action, but I feel sure, even if it was a little indiscreet, that they young doctor only meant kindness to me. He came forward, seated himself on the side of my bed, and put his arm soothingly around my shoulders. It was a terrible task to play insane before this young man, and only a girl can sympathize with me in the position. "How do you feel tonight, Nellie?" he asked easily. "Oh, I feel all right." "But you are sick, you know," he said. "Oh, am I?" I replied, and I turned my head on the pillow and smiled. "When did you leave Cuba, Nellie?" "Oh, you know my home?" I asked. "Yeah, very well. Don't you remember me?" "I remember you." "Do you?" And I mentally said I should not forget him. He was accompanied by a friend who never ventured a remark, but stood staring at me as I lay on my bed. After a great many questions, to which I answered truthfully, he left me. Then came other troubles. All night long the nurses read one to the other aloud, and I know that the other patients, as well as myself, were unable to sleep. Every half hour or hour they would walk heavily down the halls, their boot heels resounding like the march of a private of dragoons, and take a look at every patient. Of course, this helped to keep us awake. Then, as it came toward morning, they began to beat eggs for breakfast, and the sound made me realize how horribly hungry I was. Occasional yells and cries came from the male department, and that did not aid in making the night pass more cheerfully. Then the ambulance gong, and it brought in more unfortunates, sounded as knell to life and liberty. Thus, I passed my first night as an insane girl at Bellevue. I'm gonna stop there. Oh, she didn't eat because I mean, she was eating, but she was only eating what they were giving her, and what they were giving her, like lunchtime would have been broth, and supper she would get hey Dragon Mama. And then for supper she would get like soda cracker with a glass of milk. So she was losing so much weight because they weren't being fed. Oh, have you? Oh, Dragon May, get this. So on my walk, me and my son went to go to the dollar store. I wanted to pick up fabric paint. Guess who I saw coming back? The geese have come home. So you should be not bothered by the geese anymore. No more poo on windows. No more poo on the ground. Who? The Canada geese. They flew back here. Yes. The geese. Wow. I need like that. Oh my God. Yeah, this book won't take us long to read at all. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Friday. What am I doing? I might just read it again on Friday. They are a poop machine, and they're mean. They're so mean. All right, I'm gonna go. I've got like a Claire hair in my nose. I swear. Must be nice. Freaking Queen Claire here. All right, yeah, I'm gonna go because well, I gotta go phone booth. And I'm kind of hungry again. I didn't really eat much for supper. Yeah, there goes my dog Gatsby, favorite thing to chase. Yeah. Her dog was always chasing geese and just barking like crazy. Thank you guys for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this book. I'm gonna read it again on Friday. Might as well. All right, you guys have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow with Jack the Ripper. Bye.